least 5 migrant boats trying to cross from France through the English Channel to reach the coast of the UK. Let me start up by pulling up some social media.
Cross-channel migrants normally operate in the shadows of night, but this is something profoundly different.
Channel crossing crisis. New Home Secretary's baptism of fire. Right, let's not waste any time with pleasantries. If you're serious about understanding the absolute shambles that is British politics today, you'd better hit that subscribe button now, because what I'm about to tell you will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about our so-called secure borders. Welcome back to UK Connors, where we don't do political theatre, we do brutal reality. Picture this. You've just been handed the keys to one of the most challenging briefs in government. The red box lands on your desk. You're briefing yourself on the migrant crisis, and then, bang, reality hits you like a sledgehammer. On your very first day as Home Secretary, over 1,000 migrants crossed the Channel in small boats. Not exactly the honeymoon period Shabana Mahmood was hoping for, was it? Let me paint you the full picture of this absolute disaster. 17 boats. 17 separate vessels packed with human cargo, carrying 1,097 people across one of the world's busiest shipping lanes. And here's the kicker. This single day pushed the annual total beyond 30,000 for the first time in British history. 30,000 people. That's larger than the population of Winchester. That's a small city's worth of people who've made this treacherous journey in dinghies that wouldn't look out of place in a children's paddling pool. Now, before you even think about clicking away, let me ask you something. Do you really think this is just about numbers? Because if you do, you're missing the point entirely. This is about the complete and utter failure of successive governments to grip a crisis that's been brewing for years. And if you want to understand exactly how we got here and where this is heading, you'd better make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Because I'm about to take you on a journey through the labyrinth of incompetence that passes for British immigration policy. The statistics alone should make your blood run cold. We're looking at figures that are 37% higher than the same period last year, 22,028, and exactly the same percentage increase compared to 2023's figure of 21,918. This isn't just a bad day at the office. This is a systematic acceleration of a crisis that every government has promised to solve and every government has spectacularly failed to address. But here's what really gets my goat. The language. Oh, the beautiful, sanitized language that politicians use when they are desperately trying to sound tough while achieving absolutely nothing. Shabana Mahmood calls these crossings totally unacceptable and brands the people smugglers as vile. Well, congratulations, Home Secretary. You've managed to state the blindingly obvious. The crossings are unacceptable. They've been unacceptable for years. The smugglers are vile. They've been vile since this crisis began. What's your point? And then we get to the really good bit, the solutions. Oh, the solutions are absolutely precious. Mahmood tells us that thanks to their arrangement with France, individuals can now be held and transported back to France. She anticipates the first returns will happen very soon. Have you heard this song before? Because I certainly have. Different Home Secretary, same tune, same empty promises about cooperation with the French that will somehow magically solve a problem that's been festering for years. Here's a reality check that might sting a bit. The French have their own interests, and those interests don't necessarily align with Britain's desperate desire to turn back the boats. Every single agreement we've signed with France has been accompanied by fanfare and press releases, and every single one has failed to stem the tide. Why? Because we're treating a symptom rather than the disease. If you think I'm being too harsh on our new Home Secretary, stick around and make sure you've hit that notification bell, because what I'm about to tell you about the military barrack solution will absolutely blow your mind. According to the reports, military planners are now scurrying, and I love that word choice, scurrying to find barracks to house asylum seekers and accelerate the closure of migrant hotels. Scurrying, like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Let's talk about those hotels for a moment, shall we? The British taxpayer has been footing the bill for housing migrants in hotels across the country at a cost that would make your eyes water. We're talking hundreds of millions of pounds, money that could have gone to the NHS, to education, to infrastructure. Instead, it's been spent on Premier Inns and Travelodge while the government desperately searches for alternative accommodation. And now the solution is military barracks. Because nothing says welcome to Britain quite like housing people seeking asylum in buildings designed for soldiers. It's not just the optics that are appalling, it's the sheer short-sightedness of it all. These barracks weren't designed for families. They weren't designed for long-term accommodation, and they certainly weren't designed to handle the complex needs of people who fled war zones and persecution. But here's the thing that really gets under my skin. And if you want to hear more uncomfortable truths like this, you absolutely must subscribe to UK Connors. The government is treating this like a logistics problem when it's actually a geopolitical crisis of unprecedented proportions. Every boat that crosses the channel represents a failure not just of immigration policy, but of foreign policy, of international development, of our relationships with source countries where people are fleeing from conditions so desperate that they'll risk everything for a chance at a better life. The people making these crossings aren't doing it for a laugh. They are not thinking, oh, lovely day for a boat trip across the channel. They are fleeing wars, persecution, economic collapse, climate change. And our response? Find them a barracks and hope the French will take them back. It's not just inadequate, it's insulting to everyone's intelligence. Now, let me tell you something that the mainstream media won't tell you, something that requires you to think beyond the headlines and the sound bites. This crisis on Mahmoud's first day isn't an accident of timing. It's a demonstration of how utterly powerless the British government has become in controlling its own borders. The smuggling networks don't care who the Home Secretary is. They don't care about tough rhetoric or new agreements with France. They care about profit, and as long as there's demand for their services, they'll continue to supply it. And demand isn't going anywhere. The global refugee crisis isn't shrinking, it's expanding. Climate change is displacing millions. Wars in Ukraine, Afghanistan, Syria, and across Africa are creating waves of displaced people. Economic inequality is driving migration from countries where hope has been exported along with their natural resources. The 30,000 who've already crossed this year are just the beginning. Make sure you're subscribed because I need to tell you about the French perspective on all this, and it's not pretty. From their point of view, why should they break up migrant camps and stop people from leaving France or Britain? These people don't want to stay in France. They want to go to Britain. The French have their own immigration challenges, their own political pressures, their own voters to answer to. Every agreement we sign with France essentially asks them to solve Britain's problem for us, and anyone with half a brain can see why that's never going to work long time. The arrangement Mahmoud is trumpeting, the ability to return people to France, sounds impressive until you realize that France can simply refuse to accept them back. International law is complex, and France has no obligation to accept people who successfully reach British territory unless there are specific bilateral agreements in place. And those agreements come with conditions, with quotas, with political costs that the French government may not be willing to pay indefinitely. This is where British politics becomes truly farcical. We've spent years alienating our European neighbors with Brexit, burning bridges left and right, and now we're surprised that they are not falling over themselves to help us with our immigration crisis. We wanted sovereignty. Well, congratulations, we've got it. Sovereign responsibility for every single person who makes it across the channel. The military barrack solution deserves special attention because it perfectly encapsulates everything that's wrong with how we approach this issue. It's reactive, not proactive. It's about managing the consequences rather than addressing the causes. It's about making the problem less visible rather than making it smaller. Stick people in barracks away from population centers, away from media attention, away from the public consciousness, and maybe everyone will forget this crisis exists. But here's the brutal truth that no politician wants to admit, and you need to subscribe to this channel to hear more truths like this. Every single person housed in those barracks will eventually need to be processed through the asylum system. Their cases will need to be heard, their applications will need to be assessed, and the vast majority will either be granted asylum or will disappear into the black economy while their appeals win through the courts for months or years. The asylum system itself is broken beyond repair. The Home Office is drowning in backlog cases. Immigration lawyers are overwhelmed. The courts can't cope with the volume. Moving people from hotels to barracks doesn't fix any of that. It just changes the postcode where the problem is located. And while all this is happening, while Mahmoud is making tough statements and military planners are scurrying around looking for empty barracks, the smuggling networks are evolving, adapting, improving their methods. They are not standing still waiting for British policy to catch up. They are innovative, they are ruthless, and they are profitable. They are running rings around law enforcement agencies that are hamstrung by bureaucracy, international law, and political considerations. Let me give you a dose of perspective that you won't get anywhere else. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss analysis like this. The 30,000 figure represents just the people we know about. These are the ones who were intercepted by Border Force, who were rescued by the RNLI, who made it to shore and were processed by immigration officials. How many made it across undetected? How many tried to cross and didn't make it, their bodies claimed by the channel? How many are planning to try in the coming weeks and months? The people smugglers aren't just transport providers. They are running a sophisticated international business with supply chains, logistics networks, financial systems, and customer service departments. They have boats, they have drivers, they have safe houses, they have communication systems. They adapt to law enforcement tactics faster than law enforcement can adapt to them. When one route gets shut down, they open another. When one type of boat gets intercepted, they switch to a different design. This brings us to perhaps the most uncomfortable truth of all. And if you want to hear more uncomfortable truths, you know what to do with that subscribe button. Britain has created a situation where the only way to claim asylum is to pay criminals. Legal routes for asylum seekers are virtually non-existent. The safe and legal routes that politicians love to talk about are largely fictional for most people fleeing persecution. So we created a system where desperate people have no choice but to engage with criminal networks if they want to reach safety. It's a masterclass in unintended consequences. We've made legal immigration so difficult, so bureaucratic, so expensive, that illegal immigration becomes a rational choice for people with no other options. And then we act shocked when they take that choice. We've criminalized desperation and then wonder why criminals are profiting from it. The French arrangement that Mahmoud is so excited about? It's been tried before in various forms. The returns agreements, the joint patrols, the intelligence sharing, the funding for French law enforcement. We've done all of this before. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results. Yet here we are, with a new Home Secretary announcing the same old solutions as if they are revolutionary breakthroughs in immigration policy. But let's talk about what success would actually look like, because I guarantee you won't hear this analysis anywhere else. And make sure you're subscribed for more insights like this. Success wouldn't be zero crossings, because that's impossible as long as global displacement continues and Britain remains a desirable destination. Success would be an orderly, humane, legal system for processing asylum claims that doesn't require people to risk their lives in small boats. Success would be addressing the root causes of displacement through foreign policy, international development, and climate action. Success would be sharing responsibility with our European neighbors instead of trying to dump the problem on France. Success would be integration programs that help asylum seekers become productive members of society instead of leaving them in limbo for years. Instead, we get military barracks and tough rhetoric. We get Home Secretaries making the same promises their predecessors made, using the same language, announcing the same partnerships, expecting different results. It's not just incompetence, it's willful ignorance of everything we've learned about migration over the past decade. The 30,000 figure isn't just a number. It's 30,000 individual stories of desperation, courage, and hope. It's 30,000 people who looked at the alternative, staying where they were, and decided that risking everything in a small boat was a better option. That should tell us something profound about the conditions they are fleeing and the inadequacy of our current approach. Every single person who made that crossing represents a failure of international cooperation, a failure of conflict resolution, a failure of economic development, a failure of climate action. They are not the problem. They are the symptom of much larger problems that require much bigger solutions than military barracks and return agreements with France. So here we are, with a new Home Secretary facing the same crisis that defeated her predecessors, armed with the same inadequate tools, making the same empty promises to voters who deserve better. The only thing that's changed is the name on the office door and the date on the calendar. The boats keep coming, the numbers keep rising, and the solutions keep failing. If you've made it this far, you clearly understand that politics isn't just about Westminster gossip and leadership contests. It's about real people facing real crises with real consequences. That's what UK Connors is all about, and that's why you need to subscribe if you want to cut through the political theater and understand what's really happening in this country. Hit that subscribe button. ring the notification bell, and join a community that refuses to accept spin and demand substance. Because if we don't hold our politicians accountable for their failures, who will?